Welcome back to my conversation with Mitchell Epner, a former sex trafficking prosecutor. In the first episode, we discussed the significance of the missing grand jury testimony in the James Comey case. Now we turn our attention to the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, and I get his insights into that case as someone who prosecuted sex trafficking offenses. I had mentioned to viewers in the introduction, you're a former sex trafficking prosecutor, and so I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts, and we've spoken about some of your thoughts about the recent email dump that came out of the House Oversight Committee. What was your first reaction to some of those messages about how Trump knew about the girls and other disclosures by Jeffrey Epstein in those emails?
So my first reaction was this shows that Ghislaine Maxwell should not be trusted to tell the truth about any subject, including what day of the week it is. And this is standard training for federal prosecutors. You are trained literally to treat cooperators as if they were nuclear waste or toxic waste. They could potentially poison your whole case. They have to be kept in tight containers. You have to make certain that you control them and not the other way around. And that is something that, unlike Lindsay Halligan, Todd Blanche would have been really, really well trained in, having served as an AUSA in the Southern District for more than a decade. He just chose not to do it.
And what does that suggest to you? I mean, he sat with Ghislaine Maxwell for 2 days, and Ghislaine Maxwell was very much rewarded for that. She got very shortly after that interview that transfer to the Texas prison where she's reportedly receiving concierge treatment that has raised the eyebrows of other inmates in that particular prison, her special treatment in that prison. What does that suggest to you about Todd Blanche's role in all this?
It suggests to me that Todd Blanche understands that the prior 250 years of practice by the Department of Justice has been overturned in the second Trump administration. Up until now, everybody has understood that the reason you treat cooperators with such alarm, with making certain that you are inoculated from whatever they may do, is you understand they're not there because they want to tell the truth. They're there because they want some sort of reward, a lesser sentence, being moved to a better prison, something. And if they can get it by telling the truth, they will tell the truth. If they can get it by lying, they will lie. If they can get it by reciting Little Bo Peep, they will recite Little Bo Peep, whatever it takes. And the job of the prosecutor there is to be a sleuth, to be somebody who is listening closely, poking holes in what is being said in order to acid test that what is being told to them is actually true. Todd Blanche did none of that here. And we now know that one of the fundamental things that Ghislaine Maxwell said was demonstrably false. She told Todd Blanche that Donald Trump had no interactions with the girls at Jeffrey Epstein's house. We know that's not true. That is one of the things that was captured in the contemporaneous emails from over a decade ago between Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, at a time that neither of them had any inkling that any other human being was ever going to see those emails. There was no reason for them to be sending each other false messages. So Epstein literally called it the dog that hasn't barked yet, hearkening back to The Hound of the Baskervilles and the Sherlock Holmes story. So I think that this is really strong evidence that Ghislaine Maxwell and Todd Blanche are engaged in a form of theater where she says what the Trump administration wants to hear, and the Department of Justice gives her at least some of what she wants by moving her from a reasonably harsh women's prison in Florida to a much cushier prison camp in Texas. Now, I've heard people use the term concierge service, and I think that the people who say that likely have never been in any of these prisons. In my 30 years in the criminal justice system, I've been in and out of a lot of prisons. And even a prison camp, such as the one that Ghislaine Maxwell is now in, is a place that nobody would want to be. If any of the women who are in prison there were told you can leave and go home to whatever circumstance that is, or stay here, every single one of them is leaving.
Right. And I think that the reporting in Ghislaine Maxwell's particular case is that she is getting different treatment than the other inmates and different privileges than the other inmates. Just a quick question, as someone who's been inside the Justice Department, seeing the Justice Department's behavior, even sending down the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal criminal defense attorney, for this interview, the fact that you had the kind of masquerade of trying to open the grand jury records that seemed like a stunt to prevent the release of the actual Epstein files. What does that say about what the Justice Department's role in this broader effort in the Trump administration is? And how does that make you feel as an alumnus of the Justice Department?
So I have signed several letters, and I wished I had been aware of several others that have been submitted by former federal prosecutors decrying what has been done by the current Department of Justice. I remember when I was in college and then law school, during the prosecution of John Gotti, his defense counsel, Bruce Cutler, was kicked off of the case by, I believe it was Judge John Gleason, on a finding that Cutler had basically moved from being a lawyer to being essentially a member of the Gotti criminal enterprise. Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi and Lindsay Halligan are no longer, in my view, representatives of the Department of Justice. They are personal emissaries of Donald Trump, who cares not a whit about justice, the rule of law, or any of the things that have been the foundation of our system for the last 250 years.
And of course, the recent emails that were released by the House, those came from Epstein's estate pursuant to a subpoena. If the files were released, based on what you've seen, what would you expect from the FBI interviews in the investigation, in a proper investigation, knowing what we know about Trump's proximity to Jeffrey Epstein? Should he have gotten a visit? Should he have been interviewed, even just for his knowledge as a witness to what was going on? And do you think anything like that may exist?
I'm not going to speculate on any of that. And part of the reason that I won't is it's very clear that the initial investigation that occurred under then U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, who I regret to say was a law school classmate of mine, was a perversion of justice. It was not designed to get to the truth. And it led to a ridiculous sweetheart deal where Jeffrey Epstein was in jail essentially to sleep Mondays through Thursdays, but he was let out to his office during the days on weekdays, and he was allowed to go home for the weekends for 9 months for heinous crimes. So I don't know what was and wasn't done as a part of that investigation. In a well-done investigation, yes, Donald Trump would have been one of the people who was interviewed, even though his only connection to the case was apparently being one of Jeffrey Epstein's best friends at the time.
And so that, without speculating, just as a matter of proper investigative and prosecutorial practice, you would want to find out what he knows, correct?
Well, yes, because one of the things that we found out from these emails is that Donald Trump spent hours at Jeffrey Epstein's home, at least in the company of Virginia Giuffre. One of the things that Donald Trump has told us is that he had an ongoing issue with Jeffrey Epstein hiring away young women who were working at Mar-a-Lago. Now, I question why and how Mar-a-Lago was employing 15-year-olds. There are child labor laws out there, but putting that aside, these are questions that you would have wanted to have investigated if I was the person running that investigation.
And to repeat, you were a sex trafficking prosecutor in a very different district, the District of New Jersey, different time period. So you speak about these issues with some authority.
Yes, and to be really clear, I was doing this work in 2001 to 2004. So this is not something, they've learned better since then. This was standard practice well before the Jeffrey Epstein investigation.
Thank you so much, Mitch, for breaking it down. You've been watching All Rise News here on Legal AF, part of the Midas Touch Network. To find out more of my reporting on this and other topics, visit www.allrisenews.com. That's www.allrisenews.com. You can subscribe to support my journalism. And if you want to watch more videos like this, hit subscribe now for the next video on Legal AF.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.